How's it going, everyone? We've got some more unfortunate PlayStation news to go over. It looks like another one of the upcoming live service games might be in a little bit of trouble. Fair Game was initially scheduled for a release in 2025. It has ultimately got delayed until 2026. I thought that game also, I think it gets overshadowed by how awful the Concord debut trailer is and how much of a meltdown I had over the Burger trailer. One of the worst trailers of all time, don't get me wrong, but Fair Game also had one of the worst video game trailers of all time, one of the worst debut trailers I've ever seen. I think that PlayStation Showcase really should have showcased how out of touch PlayStation was with their audience, with the Concord and Fair Game trailer both being at that event, both being debut trailers. Concord was already one of the biggest L's in gaming history. Is Fair Game gonna follow? Well, Jade Raymond, the founder and head of Sony Group Corp's game development studio, Haven Studios, has left the company. This is a studio that she helmed, and they have been working on the online shooter Fair Game. It was noted Jade Raymond has been an incredible partner and visionary force in founding Haven Studios. We are deeply grateful for leadership and contributions, and we wish her all the best in her next chapter. Fair Games was announced back in 2023, and by the way, Fair Games, it used to be Fair Game with the $ as the S. They have dropped that promotional vehicle, and now it's just called Fair Games. It was greenlit by PlayStation several years ago. PlayStation, of course, made a gigantic live service push. However, a lot of those games were canceled or released to disastrous results, such as last year's Concord. The only game that has been a success was Helldivers 2, and that was a game that wasn't really developed by a PlayStation first-party studio, and that game didn't have the air of desperately chasing the live service bag. Raymond didn't immediately respond to a request for comment, and there you go with that. And this is another instance of a live service being absolutely disastrous. It is so unfortunate that all of this is gonna happen, and if you guys, now you're gonna hear the soapbox. You're gonna hear me dissect all of this. Live service has been such a disaster for PlayStation. I don't know if you can paint it any other way. We are talking about one of the weakest, if not the weakest console generation of all time. That is undebatable. Yes, you've had some third-party exclusivity deals that have placated the lackluster first-party output, but look at a year like 2009, and I constantly go back to 2009, you guys, because this is when PlayStation first-party started establishing themselves as the juggernaut that they are. Obviously, it happened before, and 09 was such a big year to me because that's when I got super into gaming and following it, but first party, to give you guys an idea, first party released Killzone 2, Infamous 1, and Uncharted 2 all in the same year. That is just off the top of my head. If you want to talk about other exclusives that were published that year, you also had Ratchet & Clank: A Crack in Time and Demon's Souls, all dropping in the same year, and that is off the top of my head. I think there might have been other titles like a Wipeout HD also came out that year, and I think God of War Collection came out, so you were getting the remasters and whatnot, and you were getting 5 exclusives, 3 of them being first-party titles, major first-party releases. Nowadays, you're lucky if you get 1 major first-party game a year, like last year with Astrobot, the year before that with Spider-Man 2, and you can make the argument Astrobot isn't even a major first-party release. I'll leave you to that, but this year, you literally just have Ghosts of Yote coming out, and then other titles like, Lost Soul Aside and Death Stranding 2, which are kind of second-party games. I know Microsoft is now changing the definition of first-party, however, I ain't changing my definition of first-party. First-party is a game that's developed by an in-house PlayStation studio, a studio that's owned by PlayStation, and you just don't see the output by them. And why don't you? Because so many of those studios are iced because of what they did on live service games. Naughty Dog hasn't put out a game in 5 years. What were they doing? Last of Us Factions, that got canceled. Ben's studio, all you want Days Gone 2? That ain't gonna happen. We gotta chase the live service bag. Canceled. What else? You invested a lot of money into Concord. That was a big reason why 2024 was weaker. Imagine if the money that they put towards Concord, they put towards something else, and they invested those resources. Not canceled, but released and canceled in 2 days. What else you got? You got Blue Point Games. Y'all like that Shadow of the Colossus remake? Oh, did you like that Demon's Souls remake? Not good enough. We need live service. God of War live service game for you. Canceled. And now another game in a Haven studio in Fair Games. it's probably gonna come out, but the fact is this game got revealed 2 years ago with the most atrocious CG trailer, can't even say of all time, because the Concord Burger trailer was in the same event, and that game still isn't out. It still isn't showcasing gameplay, and why is that? Is this game turning out well? You announced it 2 years ago, it was supposed to come out this year, then it got delayed to next year. We all know that this game is dead on arrival. Can we just say that this game is dead on arrival? It's gonna be another massive L by PlayStation, and another significant blunder. However, why I think this is so unfortunate is because in the past, whenever a console manufacturer made a huge misplay, there was a competitor there to swarm in and check them. They faced the consequences. That just isn't there anymore. There is nobody to check PlayStation. They could just go around unchecked, and guess what? Ultimately, this isn't going to matter in the grand scheme of things, because yeah, they have a weak first-party output. What are you gonna go? Go get an Xbox? Well, they just upped the price of their consoles. Their first-party output for so long hasn't been good, and they're just so far behind that at this point, a lot of it is over, and they're bringing their games to PlayStation. So yeah, PlayStation first-party ain't putting a lot of games out. You know who is gonna be putting out PlayStation games? Xbox first-party. So it doesn't even matter anymore. They're not gonna face the consequences. But think about all of these games. Did you want Days Gone 2? That could have happened. Well, no, you gotta have the live service game that ultimately got canceled. Blue Point Games, did you want a Legend of Dragoon remake? Did you want an Uncharted 1 remake? Well, that could have happened, but it's not now, at least not in the foreseeable future, because it got canned for a live service game. All of these games, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, I would have to say by the end of it, it would have to be upwards of $1 billion when you look at all of the games canceled. Fair game if we just take into account that it's gonna be an L. Who knows how the Horizon Online title is gonna turn out? We know that that is still in development, and maybe that'll come out and maybe it'll do well. The thing I question about the Horizon Online title is, yes, you are piggybacking off an incredibly well-known IP. Horizon is successful because it's a single-player open-world title, and Forbidden West, from a narrative standpoint, I don't think blew people away. And is Horizon at this stage of the game that absolute juggernaut IP that you can spin that into a live service game and be successful? I mean, it'll inherently have a little bit of interest because it is Horizon and it's a known IP, but I just don't know if people want a live service out of PlayStation first party. And the reality is, you guys, also understand this, that this push towards live service is why they don't want to do a game like a Killzone 2 remaster. They don't want to divide their user base into playing those old, rotten multiplayer experiences. We can't monetize those. We can't consistently give you content updates on a Killzone 2. You're not getting that. You're gonna play Concord and you're gonna like it. You're gonna play fair games and you're gonna like it. Screw your Killzone 2, because we can't monetize that game on the back end. And that's why I believe a lot of those games aren't happening. I also just think PlayStation, you know, hates us, and they'd rather remaster Days Gone and not give us Ratchet and Clank Future Collection. And yeah, I'm not to crap on the Days Gone collection, or Days Gone remaster, Days Gone collection. It'd be nice to, you know, one day have a Days Gone collection with a sequel, but I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. But it's like, we have so many games in that PlayStation 3 era not getting remasters. We have sequels that people want, new games that people actually want from these incredibly talented studios. And what do you get? Live service game after live service game. And the reality is, why it's so unfortunate is the game development cycle has ballooned up. When you're talking about a Last of Us Factions getting canceled, when you're talking about new studios getting their games canceled, they've been working on these games for 3, 4, 5 years, even longer than that. Why do you think we're not going to see a new game from Naughty Dog for a 7-year window? That's the longest amount of time Naughty Dog has ever gone without putting out a game. In fact, they put out the entire Uncharted trilogy on the PlayStation 3 in that space. Actually, no, they put out the entire Uncharted trilogy and Last of Us Part 1 on the PlayStation 3 in that time period. We can't even get one game from them within 7 years. That's the reality of what happens when you have ballooned up development cycles, games, developers working on live service games that ultimately get canceled, and now you're left with one of the weakest console generations of all time. That is what's happened, and I get it. A lot of you guys, are you cheering for these games to fail? Do you want people to lose their jobs? I feel like that is the immediate defense people go to. You just are cheering for people to get fired. No. I hope you guys understand that if this live service planned by PlayStation was successful, you know what they would have done? More live service games, more monetized games. That's what have ultimately happened. I am happy in a sense that this live service game has been a disaster. This live service push has been a disaster because guess what? The alternative was it was successful and then everything would have been live service. Screw your single player games. Why are we not doing more live service games? And I don't want these kinds of experiences. I just don't. Take the resources, you burned $1 billion. Give me the Gravity Rush 3 already. Give me Days Gone 2. Give me those games that I actually want and we know will be relatively successful. I mean, you know, Gravity Rush 3, I don't know how big that would be, but a simultaneous release on PC, I think it would do fairly well. I think in 2025, 2026, in this era of gaming, I think people would gravitate towards Gravity Rush 3. I'm not saying it would sell millions and millions of copies. I think it would do better than Concord, though, and Concord certainly had a bigger budget attached to it, but just look at it. PlayStation has gone away from what brought them to the dance, and it's because remember, all of those exclusives, while it's good of them to do well in a vacuum, all of it was done to make people gravitate towards PlayStation as their primary console. That is why exclusives exist. They want to bring you into that ecosystem. Well, that ecosystem at this point has been established and there is no direct competition. They are not incentivized as much to do big exclusives. They're just not. They don't need to as much anymore. They're still gonna do them, but they don't need to as much anymore. So once you have that ecosystem established, what do? You try to establish other ecosystems within the ecosystem. That's what the Concords, the Fair Games, the Helldivers 2, the Last of Us faction, all of those games are supposed to be these mini ecosystems that are living. They have people playing them, people spending money on them, and then they're making more money within that ecosystem, and all of those people are PlayStation Plus subscribers, and it just makes it more and more passive revenue and revenue that you can count on. But the reality is, the majority of games are not going to be Marvel Rivals. The majority of games are not going to be Helldivers 2. The majority of games are probably going to be somewhere in between Concord and Helldivers 2, but that's still not sustainable enough to be a successful live service game. Concord was an absolute disaster, and, you know, I could see Fair Game easily being in that category as well. We'll see how Marathon does. I don't have high hopes for it, and I don't think you know, it's gonna do exceedingly well for a Bungie title, but we'll see. Fair Game, I'm pretty confident is gonna be, like, saying anything's gonna be a Concord level disaster, I feel like is a stretch, but I don't think it's gonna be all too successful. But what a story here, and live service has been one of the craziest train wrecks I've ever seen, and what a wild thing when you lose a literal cycle of game release. And this push, you guys, is the reason why in a decade, 2 decades, people are gonna look back in the PlayStation 5 era of PlayStation first party and be like, this is one of the weakest outputs that PlayStation has ever had. And, you know, I look at the games in the pipeline, yeah, there's some cool stuff. Soros, Ghosts of Yote. I think Intergalactic is gonna bomb, but that's just my opinion. Maybe it won't. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. As always, sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.